Hello, and welcome back to Creepy Chronicles. Before we begin, feel free to leave a comment and tell me where you're listening from. I love reading every single one. If you enjoy Creepy Chronicles filled with spine-chilling horror, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Now get comfortable. Dim the lights if you dare. Relax your mind. Let the outside world fade away. And let's begin. Story 1. What exactly was De Monstrum Enigmium? That was the question that pulled me into a rabbit hole I never expected to enter. I first saw the name while reading through an old online forum. I was deep into a discussion about strange World War II documents when one post caught my attention. The person who made the post said they had found a photograph of some Nazi officers while researching the war. In the corner of that photograph, sitting on a desk, there was a folder with the words De Monstrum Enigmium written on it. The poster also said the folder had part of a stamp on it, and that stamp looked like it said sealed by Frere. That was all they had written. No explanation, no follow-up, no clear source. They only said they were not very good at pulling information from the internet and asked if anyone knew what the words meant. The link they posted was already dead by the time I found the thread, so I sent them a private message and asked if they still had the image. Then I waited. At first, I did some simple searching on the normal web. Nothing came up. I searched the exact words. I searched different spellings. I searched Latin phrases, Nazi archives, old SS files, occult documents, and anything else I could think of. Every search led nowhere. Then, because I was curious and already too involved, I started looking in darker corners of the internet. Even there, I only found tiny scraps and useless mentions. Nothing solid. Nothing that explained what the phrase meant or why it would be on a Nazi folder. About 3 weeks later, the original poster finally replied. I still do not know if that person was a man or a woman. They did not say much. They only sent me the images and wrote, "Good luck. Keep me posted." The first thing I did was check whether the photos had been edited. I thought someone might be trying to fool me, so I looked for signs of digital manipulation. I checked the light, shadows, grain, edges in the background. The images looked like they had been scanned from old negatives. There were small artifacts and marks that made them look real, not like modern edited pictures. After that, I went over each image slowly, almost millimeter by millimeter, looking for anything useful. The photos showed what looked like a plain office. I could not tell where it was. There were no framed photos on the walls, no cabinets, no personal items, and nothing that made the place feel permanent. It looked more like a temporary room someone had set up for a meeting. There were 2 men in the photos. Both were wearing SS uniforms. I could not identify them at first, but I noticed a badge on both uniforms. It looked like something linked to the occult division. The first photo showed the 2 men talking to each other. They were not smiling. Their faces were serious, almost stiff. The next 2 photos were nearly the same. It felt like they had been told to pose as if they were having an important conversation. The desk was mostly hidden in those pictures, so I could not see what was on it. But in the last photo, the 2 men were shaking hands and looking toward the camera. Their smiles were cold and formal. That was the image where the desk was finally visible. On top of some files was the folder. The words on it were clear enough to read, De Monstrum Enigmium. Beside the words was the partial stamp the original poster had mentioned. I could not read the whole stamp, but it did look like something official. I saved the image and made notes. Then I decided I needed to find out who the two men were. The man sitting behind the desk turned out to be Otto von Weib. The other man remained a mystery. I could not find anything reliable about him. Even Otto was hard to research. There was very little information about him. From what I could find, he had been a mid-level officer in the SS Occult Division and had worked with archives. He was supposed to be a records man, someone who managed files and reports. After the war, he disappeared. There were no clear arrest records, no death record, and no confirmed location. That made no sense to me. A mid-level archive officer should not have been that hard to trace. Senior officers vanished all the time, but many of them still left trails. Otto did not. Every lead I followed seemed to turn into nothing. Some records suggested he had worked in Poland. Others pointed to offices that did not seem to exist anymore. A few sources sent me in circles. It felt like someone had wiped him clean from history, or like Otto had been very good at hiding himself long before anyone came looking. That was when I tried to find the original source of the photographs. The metadata attached to the scanned images pointed toward an archive in Germany. It belonged to a library that held Nazi-era records. Some of their records had been scanned and placed online, but most were still only on paper. Many documents were too old and fragile to scan without damaging them. I reached out to an online research group that specialized in Nazi records. They were very active, and one of their best researchers used the name Archer 854. When I shared the photos with Archer, he replied almost immediately. He wanted to know where I had found them. I told him the story, but I did not give him the original poster's username. I wanted to protect that person's privacy. Archer asked a few more questions, then went silent. The next day, he finally messaged me and said he was going to visit the archive himself. He wanted to check for Otto von Weib and see if there was anything connected to his office. I thanked him and waited. 2 weeks passed without a reply. At first, I thought he was busy. Researchers often disappear for a while when they are going through old files. But then another member of the group contacted me. Her name was Anna. She said they were looking for Archer. When they checked his private messages on their board, I was the last person he had spoken to before going quiet. She asked if Archer had ever replied to me. I told her no. I was still waiting. Then she said something that made my stomach turn. Archer had visited the archive. After that, no one heard from him again. I asked if something had happened to him. Anna said she did not know. She also said Archer had not told the group about my conversation with him, which was strange. He usually shared interesting leads with them. I sent Anna the photos, and she told me she had never seen them before. Their group mostly researched the movements of senior Nazi officers, stolen property, missing art, and war loot. Occult files were not their usual area because those topics were full of lies, hoaxes, and people trying to get attention. The SS Occult Division was not exactly a secret. Many people had written about its strange interests and expeditions. There were endless claims about hidden rooms, stolen artifacts, lost documents, and forbidden rituals. Most of it sounded like fantasy. At that time, it was only a passing interest to me. I had studied things like that while I was in university, but I was not a serious historian. I am an economist now. I work for a foundation. I had no reason to get pulled deeper into this, but what followed took over 2 years of my life. And now I am afraid someone will find me the same way they found Archer and the people who worked with him. A few months after Archer disappeared, Anna contacted me again. This time, she sounded scared. Her message was short and urgent. She told me to download everything she and her friends had found. She said another member of the group had disappeared, but she did not tell me who. She only said they were being watched and that I needed to use a VPN before downloading anything. She warned me not to use my normal connection. I did what she told me. I used the Onion network too, even though it made the download painfully slow. I did not know who might be watching, and I did not want to take chances. The file she sent was a large cache of documents and photographs. At first, I thought it might only be old reports and scans, but as soon as I started opening the files, I realized this was much worse than anything I had imagined. I tried to contact Anna again, but she did not answer. I waited. Nothing. I messaged another member of the group. No reply. Then another. No reply. It was like all of them had vanished at the same time. That was when fear truly settled into me. I deleted my private messages, but before doing that, I took screenshots of everything. I also scrubbed my replies from old posts connected to the topic. I did not know what was inside those files yet, but I understood one thing clearly. Someone powerful did not want them seen. Whatever the documents contained, it was not just old history. It was connected to something that still mattered. For a long time, I could not bring myself to open the cache properly. I would look at the folder on my computer and feel sick. Finally, after weeks of avoiding it, I forced myself to go through the documents. There was no order to them, so I arranged them by date as best as I could. Many were in German, but translations had been added beside them. The original pages were kept as reference copies. I started taking notes on names, places, and dates. The first batch was ordinary. Reports on locations of interest. Old military notes. Places I had already heard about. Nothing too strange. But the second batch was different. That was when the documents began to fall into something much darker. Otto had written about a sealed room found in a monastery in the Italian countryside. The exact location was included in the documents, but I will not write it here. I do not want anyone going there. The monastery was not just any monastery. According to Otto's notes, it had once been a place where the church trained exorcists. That detail made the entire report feel heavier. The room was described like a strongbox. The outer layer was gold, and the inside was lined with lead. It sounded less like a room and more like a container built to trap or hide something. The monks at the monastery claimed they did not know why the room existed. They only knew that no one was ever allowed to enter it. That warning, of course, made the soldiers even more determined to open it. The report did not say exactly what they found inside. That was the part that bothered me the most. There were notes about the room. Notes about how it was opened. Notes about the monks being questioned. But there was no clear list of what was recovered. The only thing written was that the contents were packed and sent to Berlin immediately. After that, Otto's reports began mentioning other sites connected to the room. Some were in Russia. Some were in North Africa. Others were in places I will not name. The photographs showed Otto standing with different officers and officials. The more I looked at him, the more familiar his face seemed. I could not understand why. I felt like I had seen him somewhere before, maybe on television, maybe in an old news clip, maybe in a documentary. But that was impossible. Otto should have been long dead. Still, the feeling would not leave me. 6 months later, another message appeared in my forum inbox. It came from a different member of the group. The message was only one sentence. All are gone. Someone very powerful knows. Below that sentence was an onion link. I stared at the message for a long time. I did not open the link right away. For several days, I tried to ignore it. I told myself not to get involved again. I told myself that whatever had happened to Anna, Archer, and the others was not my fault. But deep down, I felt responsible. I had been the one who started the search. I had been the one who sent the photos. If I had left that forum post alone, maybe none of them would have gone digging. Eventually, fear and guilt pushed me to open the link. It led to a single audio file. No text, no image, just a recording that lasted 20 minutes. The voice belonged to a man who introduced himself as William. He sounded tired, sick, and frightened. He said that if someone was listening to the recording, then he was probably dead. He explained that he had once had access to something he called the Black Archive. He did not explain exactly what that was, but he said very few people could access it without strict rules and permissions. One day, while searching for a different file, William found a folder named De Monstrum Enigmum. He said the title was a broken form of Latin, something close to the mystery of monsters. It sounded simple, almost silly, but the folder caught his attention because it was a Nazi file marked for the Frere only. Inside the folder was a manifest of items that had been sent to Berlin for study. There were clay casings, like the kind used to protect ancient writings. William compared them to the containers that held old religious texts, but these were not called pots. They were called casings. Inside them were papyrus documents covered in writing. The manifest said there were 235 of these papyri. There was also a chest containing a robe. The folder did not explain what was written on the papyri. It did not describe the robe. It did not say why these things mattered. No other documents were attached. William said the files beside it were unrelated, so he began searching for any evidence of the missing papyri or the chest. He eventually found an account connected to a man who had taken refuge in Rome after the war. The man used the name Otto Miller, but William believed the name was false. Otto had somehow carried a few of the papyri out of wartime Berlin. Those papyri were locked away in archives William could not directly access. He needed special permission, and asking for that permission would have drawn attention. So, he found another way. He used an old computer that contained archived photographs of the documents. At that point in the recording, William coughed badly. His voice became weaker. He said he could not explain everything written in those documents, not because he did not want to, but because he thought it would damage the mind of anyone who understood it. Then he said something I have never been able to forget. The monsters in the title were not beasts. They were people. According to William, the documents spoke about people who harvested other people in order to extend their own lives, not symbolically, not as a metaphor. He meant there were, or still are, human beings who use other humans as a way to keep themselves alive far beyond a normal lifespan. He said he did not know the full method, because the papyri he had seen did not include that part. The archive only contained the papers Otto had smuggled out of Berlin. The documents described rituals performed by a matriarch who had lived for more than 1,000 years. They also spoke of the great ones who held court in lands of great lakes. William said the language sounded mystical, but he believed that was only a cover. The truth was hidden inside symbolic words, so ordinary readers would dismiss it as myth. William then said he had reached out to a friend to help him locate the remaining documents. She told him they had gone missing from the archives sometime after the war. No one knew where they were or who had taken them. Soon after that, William's access to the archive was revoked. He was told to leave his residence immediately. Then, people began following him. He said he saw the same faces in different streets. He could not enter a public bathroom without someone standing near the door, watching. He made the recording as a warning. His final message was simple. Stop looking for the files before they come looking for you. The recording ended. I tried to download the audio file, but it vanished before I could save it. I think the original file was deleted while I was listening, and what I heard near the end was only the buffered version still playing on my system. After that, I became painfully aware of everything around me. Every stranger looked like a watcher. Every parked car felt suspicious. Every person standing too long in one place seemed like they were waiting for me. Time passed. I finished university. I found work. Life slowly returned to normal. I told myself the whole thing had been fear, obsession, and coincidence. I told myself people disappear online all the time. I told myself William may have been lying, or sick, or trying to scare whoever found the link. Little by little, I pushed De Monstrum Enigmum to the back of my mind. Then, years later, an email arrived in my inbox. There was no proper sender name, no greeting, no explanation, only a message. Religion is a construct. Humans were engineered by them as biostorage for their own existence. You are not food. You are a living fridge. They know. That was all. The old fear came back at once, stronger than before. My hands went cold. My skin crawled. I read the message again and again, hoping it would somehow look less real the next time. But it did not. It felt like a hand reaching out from the past and closing around my throat. Since then, I have started seeing them. Maybe they were always there. Maybe I only noticed them now. A man in a gray coat outside my office. A woman sitting in the same calf 3 days in a row. A black car that appears behind me when I leave work late. I try to tell myself I am imagining it, but I no longer believe that. If you are reading this, then please understand what I am trying to say. There are people out there who have hidden themselves behind history, religion, governments, and archives. They are not monsters because of how they look. They are monsters because of what they do. And if the documents are true, they do not see us as people. They see us as storage. They see something inside us that they can take. And sooner or later, they will come to collect it. Story 2. I worked as a bartender at an Irish-style pub inside O'Hare Airport for longer than I really want to admit. The place was called Mickey's Pub, and it sat close to the United Terminal, which meant we were often the first stop for tired travelers getting off a plane and the last stop for nervous travelers before they got on one. I saw every kind of person there. First-time flyers who tried to act calm but kept checking the departure board every 10 seconds. Business travelers who flew so often that airports seemed more like home to them than their own houses. Rich college kids with their parents' credit cards. People who called themselves explorers because they had visited 3 countries and bought a leather bracelet in each one. You name the type, and sooner or later, they landed at Mickey's Pub. The best part of the job was not the drinks. It was the stories. Airports are strange places because everyone is either leaving something behind or heading towards something they do not fully understand yet. People sit at a bar with a boarding pass in their pocket, a bag at their feet, and suddenly they want to tell a stranger their whole life. I heard stories about terrible flights, missed connections, strange meetings, family fights, weddings, funerals, breakups, and miracles that sounded too neat to be true. I remember one man named James Mayfield who dropped onto the stool closest to the taps one night and told me his flight had arrived early because of a strong tailwind. Because he landed ahead of schedule, he decided to surprise his long-distance girlfriend. Instead, he found out she was cheating on him. He sat there drinking whiskey and laughing in that empty, broken way people laugh when they do not know what else to do. Then there was Ms. Lauren Naylor. Her taxi got a flat tire and made her miss a flight on the day of the body bombings. Years later, a delayed connection made her miss boarding a cruise ship that later disappeared. She told the story like she was grateful, but her hands shook the whole time she talked. She said some people are lucky in a way that feels like a warning. Those were all good stories, the kind that stay with you after the person pays and walks away. But none of them came close to the story told by the young man who sat on that same stool just a little over a day and a half ago. His ID said his name was Greg Reeves, Jr. He was 21 years old, thin, pale, and shaky, with the lost, frozen look of someone who had just seen something his mind could not accept. He came through the fake wooden pub doors like he did not fully know where he was. The soft Irish session music was playing in the background, and the place had that early morning airport feeling, quiet but never truly peaceful. People were moving outside in the terminal, wheels clicking over the floor, announcements echoing somewhere far off. But inside the pub, it felt like Greg had walked in from another world. At first, I took him for the nervous first-time flyer type. I had seen that look before. Some people hate flying so much that once the plane lands, they need something strong just to remind themselves they are still alive. So I gave him my usual friendly line and suggested a shot of Jameson, with a beer to take the edge off. My words seemed to pass straight through him. He stared past me at the taps with his mouth half open. His eyes blinked slowly, like he was waking up from a bad dream but had not escaped it yet. After a minute, I crossed my arms and looked at him a little harder. He climbed onto the stool slowly, like he had to think about every move. I started wondering if maybe he had already had too much to drink on the flight. Either that, or he had taken some kind of pill, maybe something for anxiety, maybe something stronger. And if that was the case, I needed to know before I served him. A few more seconds passed before he seemed to notice I was standing there. He swallowed hard, like his mouth was dry, and ordered a double Jameson and ginger ale. Then he pulled out a wad of cash. That made me relax a little. Not completely, but enough. People who are too drunk to stand usually do not tip well, and this kid looked like he was ready to pay for silence. I made his drink and asked, "Rough first flight? Where are you from?" "Near Cincinnati," he said, his voice uneven. "First time flying since—" He stopped there. I almost smiled to myself because I thought I had guessed right. He was scared of flying. That was it. I turned back with the cold amber drink and set it in front of him. That was when I noticed how much he was sweating. The glass was wet with condensation, but somehow his face looked even wetter. "Since what?" I asked. I looked around the bar. Other than a quiet couple sitting at a small table, we were alone. That was normal for a Tuesday morning. The real crowd would come later, once the New York flights started bringing in my regulars for Irish coffee and whatever excuse they used to drink before noon. Greg took a long pull from the straw. For a second, his eyes seemed to come back to life. Then he coughed, almost choking on the drink. Since, he wiped his mouth. Do you really want to hear this story? I smiled because that was part of the job, too. People needed permission to unload the thing sitting on their chest. Sure, I said. Why not? Just don't make it take all day. I don't got all day. Then I laughed and added, that's not true. But keep it kind of short. Flight 1 from New York is due soon, and I have a few regulars who will come in looking for Irish coffee. He nodded, but not like he had heard me. More like his body was doing things without him. I grew up in Warren, Ohio, he said. He looked at me like I should know what that meant. I did. Warren? I asked. That place that had all the weird weather about 10 years ago? His eyes widened. They locked onto mine. Yeah, he said quietly. That Warren, Ohio, you had all those freak storms, right? The dust storm with the mites? He breathed in sharply, then let it out through his nose. Oh my God, he said. The dust was bad. It covered the whole county. It got into houses, cars, schools, churches. It felt like the air had turned into old flour. But the mites came a day or two after the dust cleared, and they were worse. He rubbed his arms as if he could still feel them. They were everywhere, he continued. Anywhere dust could settle, they were there. In carpets, vents, beds, curtains, closets, everyone I knew had bites or rashes over half their body. It felt like they were crawling between layers of your skin, in your ears, your nose, even near your eyes. Some people looked so bad that no doctor could convince them it was just mites. I had heard stories about it before, but hearing it from someone who had lived through it was different. Greg was not telling it like someone repeating a local legend. He was telling it like a person remembering a punishment. His glass was empty already. I pointed at it with my eyes. He gave a small nod. I made him another drink. He kept talking. We also had a fall thunderstorm that people still talk about. It was supposed to be one of those once-in-a-lifetime storms. The lightning was constant. Not flashes here and there. I mean, the whole sky kept lighting up over and over, like someone was taking pictures of the world from above. He stared down at the bar. There was a huge flock of Canadian geese flying through it. The storm confused them. They got caught in the lightning. It cooked them, literally cooked them in the sky. They fell all over town. I stopped wiping the counter. Burned geese landed on roofs, in yards, on cars, through windshields. Coyotes dragged them into ditches. Dogs found them. Kids found them. One goose came through our skylight. He looked up at me, and now there was something awful in his face. I was a kid. I was in bed. The glass shattered, and this burned, half-dead goose landed at the foot of my bed. It was flopping around, bleeding, its neck cut open by the broken glass. Lightning kept flashing behind it, so I saw it in pieces. Flash, blood on the blanket. Flash, wings beating. Flash, its mouth open. Can you imagine that when you're a kid? I did not answer right away. What do you say to something like that? Two more customers came in and sat at the far end of the bar. I forced a polite smile toward them and told Greg, next one is on the house. When I get back, I have a question for you. Living in Chicago, you get used to strange weather. We have that old saying about how if you do not like the weather, wait an hour. It is true more often than it should be. Maybe that is why weather stories always interested me. Maybe talking about it makes it easier to live with. But Greg's stories were different. They had the shape of weather, but the feeling of something personal. If you ever followed strange weather news or watched documentaries about freak storms, then one event from Warren probably stands out. It had a lot of names depending on who was talking. The Squid, El Toro, the Bull, the Ace of Spades, the Reaper, Dead Man Walking. All of those names belong to the same tornado. It was a massive F5 caught on film, a mile-wide monster that moved around Warren like it was circling prey. What made it famous was not just its size. It was what it did. Smaller tornadoes seemed to form sideways from its base, stretching out like tentacles from an octopus or horns from a charging bull. Some documentary I watched said that kind of formation had never been seen before or since. Not like that. Not in the way it happened over Warren. I poured 2 Guinness drafts for the new customers and then went back to Greg. He was chewing at his fingernails, shoulders tight, eyes lowered. I made him the drink I had promised and set it down. So, I said, "What was it like seeing that tornado in person?" He looked far away. "Yeah," he said. "It was pretty intense." That was all. I waited, but he did not add anything. "Well," I said, trying to pull more from him. "Luckily, it disappeared before it hit the town." "Right? No one died?" Greg rubbed the rough stubble on his chin. "My dad was in a plane that day," he said. "He was basically a crop duster pilot. I haven't flown since he was still around." I realized then that I had touched something raw. I should have backed off. But I was too interested by that point, and the bar was still quiet. "The kid had me hooked. He used to take you up with him?" I asked carefully. "Yeah," Greg said. "Back then, he used to take pictures from the air of people's crops before spraying them. He helped farmers find wet spots, damaged places, problem areas in their fields. Now people use drones for that kind of thing, but back then, that was my dad's work. He loved it, and I loved flying with him." His voice softened. "We flew all the time. I never thought I would become scared of flying. I loved everything about the sky." Then his expression changed. "Clouds," he said suddenly. I blinked. "My dad always told me never to fly through clouds," Greg said, "especially the little low, puffy ones. He never really explained why. Turbulence, maybe," I said, "and visibility, especially in a small plane. I guess it is different in a jumbo jet. But what do I know? I work in an airport, but I do not know much about flying." Greg shook his head. "Any pilot will tell you not to fly through the puffy clouds," he said. But my dad was different when he said it, like he knew something. He took another drink. "When I was a kid, he gave me this model rocket. It had a tiny camera inside it. You know, one of those cardboard rockets with a little engine, like a firework motor. It would shoot up, then the parachute would pop out, and it would float back down. This one took pictures on the way down with a small roll of film. For the first time, he almost smiled. I was so excited. The first day I got it, my dad helped me launch it twice. On the third launch, he had to go inside for something. I do not remember what. He told me to wait." Greg looked at his own hands. "But I didn't wait. I did something stupid, something I thought was impossible. I stacked a few of the rocket engines together. I wanted it to go higher. Then I aimed it at a low, puffy cloud." He lifted one finger from the bar and made a little rocket motion toward the ceiling. "I wanted to know if it could reach the cloud. I wanted to see what was inside." He let his hand drop. "I killed a cloud. I should have stopped him right there. I should have told him he had enough, called someone, or asked him to leave." But he did not sound drunk. He sounded clear. Too clear. His face was pale, But his words were steady, and that made the story worse. He told me the rocket shot up and disappeared into the little cloud. A second later, the cloud popped. That was the word he used. Popped. He said it burst like someone had stabbed a water balloon in the sky. Water fell out of it. Not like rain, but like one sudden dump of liquid. Thin white pieces of cloud scattered and twisted in the air like torn bits of skin or latex. The sunlight passed through the breaking vapor, and for 1 second, he saw a face. Not an animal shape. Not a silly face like kids point out in the clouds. A real expression. Sorrowful, terrified. Sunken in the thinning white wisps as the cloud boiled away and vanished. That was the day it all started, Greg said. He stared past me again. I was soaked. I never found the rocket. I was sad for reasons I could not explain. That night, the sunset was the reddest one I had ever seen. After that, I started seeing faces in the clouds. He swallowed. At first, I thought it was my imagination. And of course, I did not tell anyone. Who would care if an 11-year-old kid said he saw faces in the sky? At first, the faces were sad, like those old Greek tragedy masks. Everywhere I looked, there they were. Long eyes, open mouths, hanging over the town. He tapped his glass once. Then they changed. They became angry, almost demonic. They were always just within sight. When I rode in the car, I saw them through the window. At school, I saw them outside the classroom all day. At home, I saw them through the skylight. I stopped going flying with my dad. I put a poster over my skylight so I would not have to look up. He gave a weak laugh with no humor in it. But that did not stop anything. It got worse. He told me about the dust devils next. Not one or two spinning across a field the way you might see on a hot day. A whole swarm of them came during his Little League game, the game that could have sent his team to state. They tore across the field, throwing dirt, grass, hats, gloves, and even the bases into the air. Kids screamed. Parents ran from the bleachers. The game was canceled. Greg said he knew even then that it was not random. They were following me, he said. The clouds, the weather, whatever I had hurt. I did not know what to say, so I let him keep going. On my 12th birthday, my family took a trip to Disney World. It rained every single day. Not normal rain, hard rain, flooding rain. They closed most of the parks, and we were stuck inside almost the whole trip. My mom kept saying it was bad luck. My dad just kept looking at me. That was when, Greg said, the dangerous weather began. The things people outside Warren had heard about. The dust storm, the mites, the lightning geese, the strange storms that seemed impossible. And then, finally, El Toro. By then, I felt like I needed a drink myself. So what does your dad have to do with your flight today? I asked. And all of this? Greg's face tightened. The day before El Toro, he said, my dad was hired to take photos over a cornfield that had been damaged by a hailstorm the week before. When he came home, he had the photos with him. He showed them to me when he confronted me. Confronted you? Greg nodded. The hail damage in the crops spelled out my name. I stared at him. It was not perfect, he said quickly. It was vague, but it was clear enough. Greg, 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 over and over in the corn, like something had written it from the sky. He rubbed his palms together. My dad asked me what I had done. He warned me again about never flying through clouds. The way he looked at me, I think he already knew about the rocket. I do not know how, but he knew. So I confessed. I told him about launching the rocket into the cloud. I told him it popped. I told him about the face. Greg's voice dropped. The next day, during the storm, my dad took off from the little airport. He flew right into that weather. Then the tornado and the storm just disappeared, like they had never been there. I felt a cold spot move through my stomach. They found his plane later, Greg said. It was completely intact. It had landed in an empty field. No crash, no fire, no damage that explained anything. But my dad was gone. He looked at me. They searched for 2 weeks, on the ground, from the air. Divers checked a small lake. Dogs were brought in. Nothing. They never found his body. For a moment, the music in the pub seemed too soft, the terminal outside too far away. And after that, I asked, the storm stopped? Yeah, Greg said. The storm stopped. The clouds stopped looking at me. My mom, my sister, and I mourned him. Then we moved away. I finished middle school, then high school. I went to college, got a job, tried to be normal. He let out a shaky breath. But the job requires travel. That is why I am here. I thought I could fly again. I thought enough time had passed. What happened? I asked. He leaned closer, and his voice became almost a whisper. We reached cruising altitude, and I was starting to relax. I told myself I was being stupid. I was on a normal commercial flight. Big plane, clear weather, nothing to worry about. He closed his eyes. I opened the window shade. It was dawn. The sky was clear and beautiful. Then I saw him. Your dad? Greg nodded slowly. He was standing on a shelf of cloud, close enough for me to see him. His face was pale blue, like ice under moonlight. His body was not fully human anymore. Part of him was cloud. Part of him was ice, like he had been buried alive in the sky, his eyes filled with tears, but they did not fall. He turned and looked right at me. His eyes met mine. He was trapped up there, entombed but still alive. Then his mouth opened like he was screaming, maybe at me, maybe for me, maybe just screaming for anyone to notice him. Greg's fingers tightened around the glass. I shut the shade and kept it shut for the rest of the flight. He kept talking after that, but I started to feel the spell break. At first, his story had pulled me in because it was strange and well told. But now I was watching him carefully and wondering if I should call someone. Airport security. Medical help. Maybe some kind of mental health service. The kid was terrified, and whether the story was true or not, he believed it. He said he was worried the clouds had remembered him, that they had only taken his father by mistake or as payment, that now, after seeing his father on the flight, they would know Greg was the real one who killed the cloud. He said they would come back for him. I said nothing. I just stood there trying to figure out what the responsible thing was. Then a few more customers came in, and I had to step away. I served them, poured coffee, mixed drinks, gave the usual airport bartender smile. When I glanced back, Greg was still there, hunched over the bar, watching me like I might somehow have an answer. I did not. When I turned away again, he suddenly got up and hurried toward the door. At first, I thought good riddance. I do not say that proudly, but it is true. I checked the bar and saw he had left cash. More than enough. A generous tip, too. Then I noticed a napkin beside the money. On it, in shaky writing, he had written, "It's happening again." An arrow was drawn beneath the words. It pointed behind me. I turned. Greg had not gone far. He was standing in front of the TV near the corner of the pub. The Weather Channel was on. The anchors were talking fast, using the kind of serious voices they save for disasters. There was breaking news about a particularly dangerous situation. They were calling it a 5 out of 5 tornado outbreak event. The storms were expected to move toward Chicago from the west later that day. I looked at the screen for a while, then back toward the entrance, but Greg was already gone. The Weather Channel likes to make things sound worse than they are. Everyone knows that. And nothing happened that evening. Nothing happened overnight. Nothing happened the next morning either. No monster tornado came through Chicago. No sky full of faces. No strange clouds. Just normal airport weather, gray and boring and forgettable. I put the whole thing out of my mind as much as I could. Then the cops showed up a little after noon today. There were two men. One was a federal air marshal. He was serious, stiff, and careful with every word. The other was either an airport cop or some higher up with TSA. I am not sure. He had that official look, but something about him was different. The marshal stayed focused on me. The other guy wandered around the bar, stopping near the stool where Greg had sat, looking at it like the stool might start talking. The marshal asked for security footage from that morning. Then he started asking about Greg. Did Greg say where he was going? Did he say where he had come from? Did he tell me why he was in the airport? Did he seem upset? Did he seem confused? Did he talk about hurting himself or anyone else? Did he say anything strange? I gave them the footage. I also gave them the safe version of the story, the non-crazy version. I told them Greg said he was scared of flying. I told them he had talked about bad weather in Warren, Ohio, and about his father disappearing years ago. I did not tell them every detail about killing a cloud or seeing his father trapped in the sky. I did not want to sound insane myself. Their questions made it seem like they thought Greg had suffered some kind of mental break. Maybe they had found him dead. Maybe they were worried he had boarded a plane and become a danger to the flight. I asked if he was okay, but the marshal did not answer. What I did learn was that Greg never showed up to his work conference. After leaving my bar, he did not continue to wherever he had originally planned to go. Instead, he caught the first flight headed west, before the storm system was supposed to form. The marshal took a few more notes and started to leave. I asked him again what happened to Greg. He said he could not comment on an ongoing investigation. The other guy, the airport security or TSA guy, looked like he wanted to say something. His lips even moved a little, but the marshal gave him a hard look, and he stayed quiet. About an hour later, that same second guy came back alone. He sat down at the bar, but he did not order anything. He just looked tired, not regular tired, the kind of tired that comes from knowing something impossible and not being allowed to say it. Then he told me anyway. He said 253 people boarded Greg's flight to Denver. Only 252 people got off. There had been no mid-air emergency, no decompression event, no broken door, no damaged window, no sign that anyone had jumped, fallen, hidden, or been taken off before landing. They checked the cargo holds. They checked the bathrooms. They checked the whole plane. They checked the waste tanks. They checked the flight path after the landing gear came down. Nothing, no body, no luggage left behind, no trace. Greg Reeves Jr. had boarded that plane, and somewhere between Chicago and Denver, he had disappeared into thin air. I have heard a lot of stories at Mickey's Pub. I have heard stories about luck, death, missed flights, strange weather, and people who should have been in one place but somehow ended up in another. But this is the first one I cannot get out of my head. Because when I left work today, the sky above O'Hare was mostly clear. There were only a few small, low, puffy clouds drifting over the airport, and I swear one of them looked like it was watching me. Story 3. It had been a while since I last wrote anything down. I know that probably sounds like a strange way to start, but honestly, there was not much to say for a little bit. I had been away on vacation in Wyoming. I did not go there for some deep reason or some life-changing purpose. I just went. I wish I could tell you there was a bigger story behind it, but there really was not. It was quiet, wide, and empty in that strange way Wyoming can be. The only thing that really stood out was the wind. It was not just strong. It felt angry. It felt like it had a reason to push against me. Other than that, nothing happened. At least nothing worth writing about. I had just gotten back home and unpacked my bags when Bianca knocked on my door. I opened it and found her standing there, right outside my house. At first, I was surprised, because she usually did not come over without some kind of warning. But the surprise faded pretty fast when I saw her face, or whatever I should call what Bianca has instead of a normal face. She looked wrong. Not more wrong than usual, because that would be hard to measure, but wrong in the way a familiar person can suddenly feel unfamiliar. Her voice sounded nervous, but her body seemed impatient. She kept shifting her weight from one foot to the other like she wanted this over with before it had even started. Her hands were held close to her chest, and she kept chewing at her nails. That would not have been too strange, except Bianca does not really have teeth. Still, somehow, her nails were bleeding. I stared at them longer than I meant to. Maybe the bleeding came from the pressure of her gums. Maybe it came from doing it again and again until the skin split. Maybe there was no real reason at all. Nothing makes sense anymore, so I have stopped expecting it to. She asked me if I could come over for a little while. The way she said it made it clear that this was not really a casual invite. It was not one of those, hey, come over for coffee kind of things. It felt more like she had been building up the courage to ask me for days, maybe longer. I wanted to ask what was wrong, but her expression made me swallow the question. So I went. When I stepped into her house, it was just the two of us. Well, technically, there were also the pets, and her grandparents were somewhere in the basement, but I have learned not to count everything in that house the normal way. Bianca led me into the living room, and we sat down on the couch. The couch made a wet squishing sound under us. I wish I could say I did not know what that meant, but I did. I had already suspected what the couch was soaked with, and the sound only confirmed it. Blood. I sat as still as I could, trying not to let my face show how badly I wanted to stand back up. Bianca sat beside me and began fiddling with her hands. Her fingers moved over and under each other again and again. On the coffee table in front of us, there were several old DVDs. Each one had a handwritten label on it. I had not seen DVDs in so long that, for one strange second, my mind focused on that instead of the nightmare sitting beside me. It made me miss physical media. There was something comforting about movies you could hold in your hand. Then I read some of the labels. One of them said wedding day. Another said pregnancy. Another one was turned just enough that I could not read it yet. Bianca finally spoke. "I guess you are wondering why I brought you over here," she said. Her voice trembled just slightly, Not enough to make her sound terrified, but enough to make me feel like whatever she had to show me was going to be bad. "Yeah," I said. "You seemed bothered by something." She looked down at her hands. "Well, you have probably noticed that Harold and I and our family are not like other families." I almost laughed, but not because it was funny. It was just the kind of sentence that hit so hard with understatement that my brain did not know what else to do. Of course I had noticed. Anyone with eyes, ears, or basic survival instincts would have noticed. But I did not say that. Instead, I tried to be polite. "Well," I said carefully, "everyone is a little odd if you really think about it." Bianca did not laugh. "I thought about what you said at the barbecue," she said. "Aside from my ungodly behavior, there are other things about our family that are just as ungodly." My stomach tightened. "Oh no," I said quickly. "I overstepped." "I should not have, Tracy," she said, cutting me off. "You have been our neighbor for a few years now. You deserve some honesty from us, especially after how kind you have been." I did not know what to say to that. Bianca stood up and picked up the DVD labeled Wedding Day. She held it in both hands for a moment, almost lovingly, as if it was something precious. Then she walked over to the TV and the DVD player. Her movements were slow now, almost careful. "I did not always look like this," she said softly. That sentence made the room feel colder. She put the DVD in. I stared at the blank TV screen and felt a deep uneasiness spread through my chest. I knew I was about to see something I could never unsee. Bianca returned to the couch with the remote in her hand. "I learned something at university," she said, "in science classes, like biology and chemistry and physics. Maybe I am remembering it wrong, but I remember learning that the most chaotic form imaginable can be one that is perfectly symmetrical." I turned to look at her. "Why are you telling me this? It feels like you are talking in riddles." The TV came on before she answered, and there she was, Bianca. Not the Bianca I knew now, with her strange body and hollow skin and impossible face. This Bianca was human, completely human. She had warm brown eyes and a smile so bright and soft it looked like it could melt butter. She stood in a wedding dress, her hair done beautifully, her face glowing the way people always say brides glow. She looked like a princess, not in a fake way, not like a costume. She looked beautiful in a way that made the present version of her even more painful to sit beside. Harold was there too. He looked almost the same as he looks now. Maybe he was a little cleaner, maybe a little less bloody. But for the most part, Harold was Harold. The wedding video went on like any normal wedding video would, which somehow made it worse. There were vows. There was a kiss. There was clapping. There was the start of a reception. People moved around in the background. Some of them looked human enough, at least from far away. Others did not. I tried not to focus on them. Then the video cut to Bianca standing with Beverly in front of a table. That was when I saw something familiar. Or maybe I should say one familiar eye, the ancient one. My body went stiff. I recognized Colleen. I recognized Tim and Jim. I could see other members of Harold's family, too, though I will not describe them. I do not think I could describe them even if I tried. Some things are not meant to fit into language. I swallowed hard. Why is Beverly there? Bianca did not take her eyes off the screen. "The perfect form of chaos is perfect symmetry," she said in a flat voice. That was when my stomach dropped. She continued, still watching the video. "Harold and I met at a ping pong tournament. It was something we both loved. We still love it, though we do not play as often anymore. I did not understand that day, not fully, how much meeting him would change everything. Her voice shook on the last part. My eyes were locked on the TV. My heartbeat was loud in my ears. In the video, Harold stood behind Bianca. Everyone around them had gone quiet. The air in the room on the screen seemed heavy, like something sacred was about to happen. "Pappy," Harold said firmly, bowing his head, "please bless my bride so she may become part of my family. She is one of us now. As you wish, do the same to her twin, because they are of the same body." Bianca and Beverly bowed their heads too. Everyone else in the background kneeled. The Ancient One began to vibrate. At first it was small, just a slight shaking. Then it grew stronger, more violent. The table beneath him seemed to tremble. Then came the sound. I had heard it before, that distorted French from my dream. It poured through the TV speakers in a warped, broken rhythm that made my skin crawl. On the screen, Bianca's nose started to bleed. Then Beverly's. The blood came slowly at first, thin lines running over their lips. Then it became more. It started pouring from their mouths, their eyes, their ears. It grew thick, turning into something like wet meat paste, sliding out of every opening in their bodies. They screamed, but the sound did not sound like a human scream. It was too high, too sharp, like a tea kettle, boiling until it was ready to burst. I gripped the couch so hard my fingers hurt. Bianca and Beverly began melting. That is the only way I can describe it. Their bodies softened and collapsed toward the floor. Skin sagged, flesh slipped, their shapes lost structure. They flattened into pools of blood and mashed flesh, and for a horrible moment, I thought I had just watched them die. Then they rose, not as women, as empty skin husks. Light, hollow, cold, the Ancient One stopped vibrating. For 1 second, the room on the screen was silent. Then the Ancient One crumpled onto the table like he was made of dried chalk. A cheer exploded from the crowd. Everyone stood and rushed toward Harold and Bianca. They clapped, they shouted, they celebrated. Harold and Bianca hugged. Then they kissed. The screen cut to black. In the dark reflection of the TV, I saw my own face. I looked horrified. Bianca spoke beside me. Genetically identical, they argued. I did not respond. I could hear her words, but they did not seem to reach the right part of my mind. They passed through me like cold air. "That is why Bev looks the same as me," she said. Perfectly symmetrical. She stood up again and replaced the DVD with the one labeled pregnancy. That movement snapped me back into the room. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked, my voice rising before I could stop it. "Why does this feel so random, so out of place?" Bianca's head snapped toward me so fast, I flinched. "Exactly," she said coldly. For a second, neither of us moved. Then, her expression softened. "I am sorry, Trace," she said. "I know I am not acting like myself. I know this all seems strange. But my life, from the moment I married Harold, has been nothing but unpredictability and madness. No day is ever the same. No moment ever repeats, not even close to the way it happened before." And yet, she trailed off. "Yet?" I asked. She gave me that almost smile of hers. Then her voice changed. It became soft and sing-song, almost sweet. "I would not change a thing," she said. "Not a single nightmare. Not any pain. Not even this body you see in front of you. I would do it again. Always, love makes you do the craziest things. I think I just needed someone else to see it. Maybe then this strange cloud over my head would finally leave." She switched the DVDs and came back to the couch. Then she pressed play. The first shot was something I had unfortunately seen before. Harold wearing Bianca. But this time, there was one major difference. Bianca's skin had a pregnancy bump. Harold was holding the camcorder in front of a mirror. The reflection showed the two of them combined, his body inside her skin, her face stretched over him like clothing. The bump pushed outward from her stomach, round and tight. Stretch marks covered the skin. Blood oozed from the areas where Harold's eyes and mouth showed through Bianca's body. I felt sick, but I forced myself to keep watching. The video cut between different moments. Harold and Bianca at the beach, Harold and Bianca at a museum, Harold and Bianca at family gatherings. In every clip, they spoke to each other with warmth and sweetness. They talked about baby names. They talked about how excited they were. They told each other they loved each other. There were also many clips of them playing ping pong while pregnant. More than I expected. In each new clip, the bump was bigger. Bianca watched with a kind of joy that did not match the horror on the screen. "Oh, I loved being pregnant," she said, in that same soft, cheerful voice. It felt like a second honeymoon for me and Harold. For a moment, it was like the nervous, unstable Bianca from earlier had disappeared. She sounded almost like herself again. Sweet, dreamy, like a fairy tale character talking about a perfect memory. I did not know what to think. Was there a curse affecting her mood? Was she breaking down emotionally? Or was I the one losing my mind? The video ended suddenly. The screen went black. Then I heard Bianca sniffle. I turned toward her. "What is wrong, Bianca?" She picked up a tissue and blew her floppy nose into it. "I was scared I would never get to show these clips to anyone else," she said, her voice breaking. "I cannot show them to my sister. It is too hard. I just wanted someone to know these moments existed, that Harold and I existed. I do not know if I could ever show them to Job. He would be horrified." Then she started crying. For all the fear and disgust inside me, something about that broke through. I moved closer and put my hand gently on her back. "I think I understand why you are not acting like yourself," I said quietly. "I mean, I was adopted. I know that is a strange thing to bring up right now, but I never got to know what my birth mother went through. I never even got her name." Bianca looked at me. I could see her in the corner of my eye while I stared at my reflection in the black TV screen. "I cannot imagine never being able to live the same moment twice," I continued. "Never being able to show these tapes to anyone else. Ever." I leaned back against the couch and looked up at the ceiling. "I never got to know my birth mom," I said. "But sometimes I like to think she might have had videos like this. Videos of her with me. Maybe if I had them, I would understand something about where I came from." I looked back at Bianca. "Is there any way Job can ever see these? Technically." "Yes," Bianca said, "but I would have to ask Pappy for permission, and as insane as it sounds, I understood why she was such a mess. She had these DVDs, these memories, but she could not simply show them to whoever she wanted. She could not just sit her son down one day and say, 'Here is where you came from.' Not without permission from the same giant eye that had melted her and her sister from the inside out on her wedding day. That same eye had turned them into hollow skin husks. Then, for her to have a child, her husband had to wear her like some kind of living suit for who knows how long, because time and bodies do not seem to work normally in that family. If that was my life, I would probably be emotionally fragile too, maybe worse. Then Bianca spoke again. "This next DVD," she said, her voice low, "I do not want any other person to see." Ever, she turned to look directly into my eyes. "I am sorry it had to be you," she said. "But if Job or anyone else in this neighborhood saw this, they would not be as forgiving or as kind as you." My throat tightened. I looked down at the DVD in her hand. The label said delivery. Every instinct in my body told me to run. I should have jumped through the window like a cartoon character. I should have sprinted down the street like Forrest Gump and never looked back. But I did not. I froze, the way I always seem to freeze in these situations. Bianca put the DVD in. Then she came back to the couch and pressed play. The video began in the same living room we were sitting in now. The curtains were drawn. The light was dim. Harold was still wearing Bianca's skin. The pregnancy bump was huge now, stretched so tight it looked painful. They were hunched over. Harold started coughing. At first, it sounded like a normal cough. Then it grew deeper and harsher. His whole body jerked with each one. He paced in slow circles around the room, still bent forward, still trapped inside Bianca's skin. The coughing became violent. Then clear liquid shot out of Bianca's mouth and eye holes. Harold blinked hard, again and again, but he kept coughing. Then he stopped. Slowly, he stretched his arms out as far as Bianca's tight skin would allow. He placed one hand over his other fist, the way someone does when giving the Heimlich maneuver. I realized what he was about to do a second before he did it. He drove his fists into the baby bump. Again and again and again. Each thrust was brutal. His hands slammed into the bump while he continued to cough. I could hear Bianca grunting, but I could not tell if the sound came from the skin, the body, or somewhere else entirely. The bump began to move. It shifted upward from the lower stomach, then to the chest, then to the throat. I could not breathe. Harold gagged. Then he vomited out a wet mess of blood and tiny bones. Job's bones. The thought hit me so hard I almost blacked out. Harold stood upright for 1 second. Then Bianca's skin slid off his body like an unzipped dress. Harold dropped to his hands and knees. He panted loudly, trying to catch his breath. The floor around him was wet and dark. Then the screen cut to black. Once again, I saw my own reflection in the TV. But this time, I did not just look horrified. I looked broken. I immediately threw up onto the floor. My body folded forward, and I started hyperventilating. I tried to speak, but the words came out between broken breaths. What? The actual? Fuck, I kept dry heaving even after there was nothing left in my stomach. Beside me, Bianca let out a long sigh. Not a sad sigh, a relieved one. "Thank God," she said. "Thank the Lord. I do not have to keep this DVD anymore. I can finally destroy it." She sounded almost cheerful. Exhausted, yes, like she had just run a marathon, but cheerful. I looked at her with pure disgust. She noticed. She moved closer to me. "I do not think you understand the burden you just lifted from me," she said. "Job will never have to see this now." I wanted to hit her. I wanted to hit her so badly that my hand actually twitched. But then I thought of Job. Sweet little Job. The boy who shoveled my driveway in the winter without being asked. The boy who brought his mother flowers. The boy who looked at me like I was some kind of role model, even though I have never deserved that. And then I understood. Bianca had done this on purpose. She knew I cared about Job. She knew I would not want him to see that. She knew that if she showed me instead, I would carry the horror so he would not have to. That had been her plan all along. And somehow, despite everything, I was not angry in the way I expected to be. I was still horrified. I was still traumatized. I still wanted to scream. But buried under all of that, there was a terrible understanding. As sick as it sounds, I think I would have done the same thing in her place. Maybe any parent would. Maybe a parent would scar a neighbor for life if it meant protecting their child from a pain that could destroy him. Bianca walked to the TV and removed the DVD from the player. Then, she ate it. She actually put the DVD in her mouth and consumed it like it was nothing. I watched without speaking, because at that point, my brain had no room left to react. After that, she walked back to me and knelt down beside the couch, lowering herself to my level while I stayed bent over and shaking. She placed one hand on my shoulder. "I know you will never forgive me," she said. "I do not know if I will ever forgive myself. But thank you for letting me protect my boy." Her voice was sincere. I nodded. I could not speak. And as messed up as it sounds, I think one day I might forgive a part of her. Not the visual part. Never that. I do not think I will ever forgive my brain for keeping those images. But I might forgive the reason she did it. Because I would not wish that video on Job. If he saw his mother's wedding day, if he saw what happened to her and Beverly, if he saw his own birth like that, I think it would destroy something inside him forever. He would feel 100 times worse than I did. Maybe more. After a while, Bianca walked me back home. Outside, Zoe was pooping in my garden, because of course she was. After everything I had seen, that should have been the least important thing in the world. But somehow it made the whole day feel even more unreal. At my doorway, Bianca gave me one big hug. She leaned close and whispered, "Thank you," into my ear. Then she walked back to her house. Zoe followed her. Now I am lying in my bed with a tub of ice cream, eating straight from it, while Bluey plays on my TV. I do not know why I picked Bluey. Maybe because I needed something gentle, something colorful, something that did not involve blood, ancient eyes, family curses, or nightmare births. I already booked therapy appointments for every possible day over the next 3 months. I have a lot more answers now. But even with those answers, I still do not understand the dreams. And honestly, after what I saw today, I do not think I want to know. Story 4. Arabella DeLittle was dead. There was no soft way to say it, no pretty way to dress it up, even though Arabella had always been surrounded by pretty things. She had been the kind of girl who looked like she belonged in a painting or a magazine ad, all soft fur, bright eyes, and the sort of confidence that made everyone around her feel smaller. But now she was lying on the cold ground near the river, and all that beauty had turned into something terrible. Her white fur coat was stained with dark red. The blood had spread across it in a cruel, ugly smear. Her mouth was still open, as if she had been trying to scream even after the sound had left her. Her eyes were half open, too, staring at nothing. And for one awful second, I almost expected her to blink, lift her head, and laugh at us for being so easy to scare. But she did not move. I was the first one to go near her. I do not know why. Maybe because I wanted to make sure she was really gone. Maybe because part of me still did not believe what had happened. My body moved before my mind could stop it. I stepped close, leaned down, and nudged her gently. Nothing. No breath. No twitch. No sound. I backed away fast, my feet slipping a little on the damp ground. I was careful not to step in the spreading pool beneath her. My stomach twisted. A sour taste rose in my mouth. I wanted to look away, but I could not. This was Arabella. This was the girl everyone had watched. Everyone had feared. Everyone had hated. And now she was nothing but a broken little body in the dirt. She deserved it, Felix snarled from behind me. His voice was sharp, but when I looked at him, I noticed something strange. He was not looking at her. Not really. His eyes kept sliding away from Arabella's body, as if even he could not face what we had done. He stared at the trees, the river, the sky, anywhere except at the dead girl between us. Mirren was the one who finally grabbed Arabella. Her paws shook as she pulled the body toward the riverbank. She was trying to act brave, but I could see the panic growing in her eyes. The same panic was starting to crawl up my own spine. Felix followed Mirren, glaring at Arabella like she could still hear him. Arabella thought she was queen, he spat. She thought she could control everyone. She thought she owned us. His words were full of anger, but they sounded too loud in the open air. The river moved slowly beside us. The city lights glittered far away, bright and perfect and uncaring. Somewhere behind us, expensive cars passed on clean streets. Somewhere, people were drinking, laughing, and going home to warm rooms. And here we were, standing over a body. "What do we do now?" Mirren asked. Her frightened brown eyes found mine. She looked younger than usual, smaller. The confidence she wore around others had completely disappeared. She was already regretting it. I could see it in the way her chest rose and fell too quickly. I could see it in how she kept glancing back toward the path, like Arabella's mother might appear at any second. What if her mom comes looking for her? Mirren whispered. Felix snapped his head toward her. She got into an accident. Mirren stared at him. "That's what happened," Felix said. "Harder this time. She slipped. She fell. She got too close to the river. We didn't kill anyone." His voice broke just a little on the last sentence, but he quickly covered it with a laugh. "And even if someone finds out," he added, "who cares? Who is going to cry over Arabella DeLittle?" Everyone knew what she was. His laugh grew louder, too loud, too confident. It echoed strangely in the trees around us. "The poor little princess flew too close to the sun," he said. "That's all." Mirren did not answer. She pushed Arabella's body closer to the edge. I stood frozen and watched, unable to help and unable to stop her. My legs felt stiff. My mind felt empty. All I could hear was the river and Felix's breathing. At last, Mirren gave one final shove. Arabella slipped from the bank and dropped into the water with a soft splash. For a moment, she floated there, white fur spreading around her like a ruined dress. Then the current caught her, turned her slowly, and started carrying her away. Mirren covered her mouth. Felix stared after the body for 1 second, then looked away again. "Her mom is an heiress," he muttered. "She'll be fine. She'll just adopt another daughter." He turned from the river. "Come on. We need to leave before someone sees us." Mirren followed him first. I stayed where I was. I watched the river until Arabella became a pale shape in the dark water. Then she was gone. I used to call her my friend. When my family and I first moved to the city, I was an outsider. That might sound strange, because I was not poor. I never had been. I grew up with soft beds, expensive food, and rooms that smelled like fresh linen and polished wood. Daddy owned a hotel supply chain, and because of that, I was used to luxury. I ate the best meals. I traveled in style. I never had to wonder where I would sleep or whether I would be safe. But money does not always make you powerful. In the city, especially on the Upper East Side, there were levels to everything. There was rich, and then there was untouchable. There were families with money, and then there were families whose names opened doors before they even knocked. There were spoiled kids everywhere, dressed perfectly, moving through the streets like they owned every inch of them. They were all my kind in a way. Rich little brats with too much free time and too many people willing to clean up their mess. But I was still new. New meant weak. New meant easy to test. I learned that very quickly. The first time I tried to introduce myself, the son of a diplomat made sure I understood my place. Felix, even then, he had that sharp look in his eyes. He did not yell at me. He did not need to. He only looked at me from across the room, his stare cold and clear. It said everything. You are not one of us. Not yet. So I stayed quiet. I watched. I learned the rules. And the biggest rule on the Upper East Side was never spoken out loud. But everyone knew it. Know your place. That was where Arabella DeLittle came in. I met her by accident on the steps outside Daddy's hotel. It was late afternoon, the kind of bright golden afternoon that made the glass doors shine and the sidewalk feel warm. I was sitting on one of the steps, eating a hot dog I had managed to get from a street cart. It was not elegant, not the sort of thing most of the girls around here would be caught touching, but I liked it. Then Arabella appeared. I knew who she was before anyone said her name. Everyone knew Arabella DeLittle. She was the daughter of an heiress, the kind of girl people whispered about in elevators and watched from behind dark sunglasses. She was beautiful, of course. Girls like her always were. She had light blue ribbons tied perfectly, and a soft pink designer jumpsuit that looked like it cost more than some people's rent. Her bright blue eyes seemed almost too clear. Her curls were perfect, each one sitting exactly where it should. She looked like someone had designed her to be admired. I almost asked where her outfit was from, but I stopped myself. Know your place. I was rich, yes, but I was not Arabella DeLittle rich. So I said nothing. I kept eating and looked down at the hot dog in my hands. Arabella sat on the top step a few feet away from me. For a while, she ignored me completely. That was what I expected. Girls like Arabella did not waste time on people like me unless they needed something. But then she glanced over. It was only a small glance, quick and careless. Still, I made the mistake of looking back. Her eyes caught mine. For some reason, I could not look away. "Hi," she said. She sounded bored already, like saying one word to me had used up all her interest. She turned away almost at once, looking toward the street as if searching for something better. "Hi," I said. My voice sounded too small. She looked back at me again. "You're adorable." That surprised me. I did not know what to say. Daddy always told me I was the cutest girl in the world. And I believed him because Daddy always sounded so sure. But there was a difference between being cute at home and being cute here. On the Upper East Side, cute had rules. Cute needed the right clothes, the right walk, the right name, the right bloodline. Arabella moved down and sat beside me. She did it like she had decided I was allowed to exist near her for a few minutes. "I love your pearls," she said. I smiled before I could stop myself. "Thanks, Daddy got them for me." She did not answer right away. Her gaze drifted down to the hot dog in my hands. She stared at it with such focus that I almost laughed. "Do you want some?" I asked. Arabella sighed like the whole world had personally wronged her. "I'm on a stupid nutritional diet." Before I could reply, a woman's voice called from behind us. "Arabella." Arabella's mother appeared at the top of the steps. She was exactly what I imagined an heiress would look like. Beautiful, polished, glowing with the kind of calm confidence money gives people. She smiled when she saw us together. "Aw, baby," she said, picking Arabella up. "Have you got a new friend?" "Ew, no," Arabella said immediately. The words should have hurt, and they did. But then Arabella turned back to me, her eyes bright with interest. "What's your name?" "Jeanette," I said. She looked at me for a long moment, like she was deciding what kind of use I could have. Then she smiled, and that was how it started. At first, Arabella did not call me a friend. She was too careful for that. Friend was a powerful word in her world. If Arabella called you her friend, people noticed. Doors opened, invitations appeared. Other girls moved aside. But if she decided you were no longer her friend, everyone noticed that too. Still, she let me stay near her. And the strange part was, she could be sweet. Not always, not even often, but sometimes. She showed me hidden places in the neighborhood. She told me which doorman gave out treats if you looked at them the right way. She taught me which women carried soft snacks in their handbags and which boys were careless enough to leave food unattended. She laughed when I said something funny, and when Arabella laughed, it felt like sunlight falling directly on you. That was the dangerous thing about her. Everyone told me to stay away. Felix was the first. He offered me peace after I shoved him out of the way of a truck. We had been near the curb, and he had stepped forward without looking. The truck rushed past so close that the wind hit both of us. I knocked him back before it could take him. For a few seconds, he just stared at me. Then, later that night, he sat beside me under the stars like we had always known each other. "Arabella's trouble," he told me. I looked at him but did not answer. "She told everyone I tried to kill her mom," he continued. "Do you understand what that does to someone?" His voice was low and bitter. He shifted closer. "She has no empathy. None. To her, everyone is just a piece on her board. She moves us where she wants. She knocks us over when she gets bored." He stood up and stretched, acting like he had not just warned me about the most powerful girl I knew. "No offense," he added, "but I can't come near you when you're near de little." I frowned. "Why?" He looked me up and down. "Because you stink of her." Then he walked away. I should have listened. Mirren warned me too. Mirren was soft-looking, with fluffy blonde hair and big brown eyes that made her seem gentle even when she was being cruel. She had been part of Arabella's circle for a long time. Maybe that was why she looked so tired whenever Arabella was not watching. One night, outside a private club, Mirren sat beside me while Arabella was inside holding court with her little group of admirers. "Day a little is poison," Mirren said. I glanced at her. "Why do you stay with her then?" Mirren laughed, but there was no happiness in it. "Because poison works slowly," she said. "By the time you know what it is, it's already inside you." I said nothing. "She started a rumor about me," Mirren went on. "A disgusting one. She told people I was into dogs." My eyes widened. Mirren looked away, embarrassed and angry. It was a joke to her. Everything is a joke to her. After that, I tried to see Arabella the way they saw her. I tried to notice the sharpness under her smile. I tried to notice how people moved carefully around her, how they laughed when she laughed and went silent when she went cold. I tried to remind myself that she had power, and power like that always hurt someone. But the more time I spent with her, the harder it became. Arabella was selfish. She was spoiled. She could be cruel when she wanted to be. But she also curled up beside me on cold nights. She shared secrets in a soft voice when no one else was around. She once told me she hated being watched all the time. She said everyone expected her to be perfect, beautiful, untouchable, and she was so tired of it that sometimes she wanted to disappear. I think that was when I made my biggest mistake. I started to care about her. Not in the safe way, not in the way I should have. I got too close. It happened on a quiet night when the city felt far away, even though it was all around us. We were sitting near the window in Arabella's home. The room smelled like expensive candles and fresh flowers. The lights were low. Arabella was telling me something about her mother, something sad hidden under a careless tone. I moved closer, too close. For 1 second, she did not move. Then she looked at me, and her expression changed. "Wait," she said. A laugh escaped her mouth, light and sharp. "Do you like me?" My whole body went cold. I backed away at once. "No," but the word came out too quickly. Arabella tilted her head. "No," I said again, quieter. I stopped because I did not know how to explain. My heart was beating so hard it felt like it might break through my chest. The room seemed too bright. The air seemed too thin. Arabella laughed again, but it was not the cruel laugh I expected. "Sweetie," she said, "I think you've got the wrong idea." I nodded. My face burned with shame. "Of course," I whispered. "I'm sorry. I don't know what I was doing. I just—" Arabella sighed. For a moment, she looked almost kind. "Girl, I really don't care," she said. "You be you, you know." She leaned back and flicked her curls away from her face. "Your secret is safe with me." That should have comforted me. It did not, because this was Arabella de Little. Her mouth could destroy me. She could tell one person, just one, and by morning, everyone would know. They would laugh behind their hands. Felix would look at me like I had proven him right. Mirren would pity me. The others would whisper. I would no longer be the new girl trying to rise. I would be a joke. I told myself Arabella would not do that. Then I remembered all the stories. Felix and his almost ruined name. Mirren and the rumor that followed her like a bad smell. All the little ways Arabella punished people when they bored her or made her feel weak. I stopped sleeping properly after that. Every time Arabella smiled at me, I wondered if she was hiding my secret behind her teeth. Every time she whispered to someone else, I wondered if she was whispering about me. Every time anyone laughed nearby, I felt my skin tighten. Fear turned into anger. Anger turned into something darker. Felix noticed first. "You finally see it, don't you?" he said one evening. I did not answer. "She'll ruin you," he said. "Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but she will." Mirren was with him. She looked nervous, but she did not disagree. "She keeps everyone afraid," Mirren whispered. "Someone has to stop her." I should have walked away. I should have told them they were wrong. But all I could think about was Arabella laughing and saying, "Your secret is safe with me," like safety was something she had the right to give or take away. So when Felix made the plan, I listened. I told myself we only meant to scare her. That was the lie I needed in the beginning. We would corner her near the river. We would make her understand she could not control us anymore. We would make her promise to leave us alone. But fear makes promises it cannot keep. Arabella came with us because she trusted me. That is the part I cannot stop thinking about. She followed me down the path, away from the bright streets and the warm windows. She complained the whole time, of course. She said the ground was dirty. She said the river smelled bad. She asked why we had brought her there. Then Felix stepped out. Then Mirren. Arabella looked from one face to another. For the first time since I had known her, she looked uncertain. "What is this?" she asked. Felix started shouting. Mirren cried. I stood there, shaking, while everything moved too fast. Arabella's eyes found mine, and something in her expression changed. She was not laughing anymore. "Jeanette?" she said. There was a question in her voice. Maybe she was asking for help. Maybe she was asking how I could do this. Then there was a struggle, a flash of movement, a sharp cry, the sound of something hitting the ground. And after that, Arabella was dead. Now the river had taken her. Felix and Mirren had already disappeared up the path, but I still could not move. The night felt colder than before. My paws felt wet, though I did not remember stepping into the blood. I stared at the dark water and waited for relief to come. It did not. I thought I would feel free. I thought I would feel safe. I thought that with Arabella gone, I would rise. I would become the one everyone watched, the one everyone feared, the new queen of the Upper East Side. But all I felt was emptiness. And behind that emptiness, something worse. Guilt. It followed me home. It curled up beside me. It breathed against my neck. When I closed my eyes, I saw Arabella's mouth open in that final, silent scream. When I tried to sleep, I heard the soft splash again and again. The next morning, the search began. Arabella's mother came out in a robe, her perfect hair messy, her beautiful face pale with fear. She moved through the street calling Arabella's name. At first, she sounded annoyed, like Arabella had hidden somewhere just to cause trouble. Arabella. Then her voice changed. It became thinner, sharper. "Arabella, baby, come here." She shook a bowl of kibble as she walked. The sound was bright and cheerful, completely wrong for the terror in her face. Little pieces rattled against the sides of the bowl. She stopped by bushes. She looked under cars. She asked doormen, walkers, neighbors, anyone who passed. No one had seen Arabella. Of course they had not. I watched from near the hotel steps, the same place where I had first met her. Arabella's mother saw me and hurried over. For one wild second, I thought she knew. I thought she could see the river in my eyes. I thought she could smell death on me. I thought she would point at me and scream. Instead, she bent down and picked me up. Her hands were gentle, warm, shaking. "Hi, kitty," she whispered, stroking my fur. I froze. She held me close against her chest, and I could feel her heart beating fast. "Have you seen your best friend?" she asked. Her voice broke on the last word. Best friend. I looked over her shoulder toward the river, though I could not see it from there. The city was shining in the morning sun. People were walking past in clean shoes and expensive coats. Nothing had changed. Nothing ever changed here, not on the surface. But Arabella was gone, and I was still here. Arabella's mother kept stroking my fur, crying softly into the top of my head. "Please," she whispered, "please help me find her." I did not move. I did not make a sound, because there was no way to tell her the truth. There was no way to say that Arabella had trusted me. There was no way to say that Felix was right and wrong at the same time. There was no way to say that Mirren was scared, that I was scared, that we had all let fear turn us into something worse than Arabella ever was. There was no way to say that the little princess had not simply disappeared. We had killed her. And the worst part was this. Arabella had kept my secret. She had never told anyone. Not Felix, not Mirren, not her mother, not the girls who followed her around like she was royalty. My fear had lied to me. My anger had lied to me. I had looked at Arabella and seen a monster waiting to destroy me, but in the end, the monster had been standing much closer. It had been inside me. Arabella's mother carried me down the steps, still shaking the bowl of kibble with her other hand. "Arabella," she called again. The sound traveled down the beautiful street, past the clean windows and polished doors, past people who turned to look and then quickly looked away. I rested against her arms and stared at the world Arabella had ruled. For one moment, I imagined Arabella appearing from around the corner, tail high, eyes bright, acting like all of this had been a game. I imagined her mother laughing through tears. I imagined Felix rolling his eyes. I imagined Mirren pretending she had never been scared. I imagined Arabella looking at me and knowing exactly what I had almost done, but saying nothing. "Your secret is safe with me." The words came back so clearly that I almost cried out. But the street stayed empty. The bowl kept rattling, and somewhere far away, the river kept moving. Story 5. Mike Timmons checked his watch as he turned off the main road and pulled into the small trailhead parking lot. 7:02 p.m. He stared at the numbers for a second, as if looking at them longer might make them change. They did not. "Damn it," he muttered. He sat in the driver's seat for a moment with both hands resting on the wheel. The engine ticked softly after the long drive, and the last weak light of the evening slipped through the windshield. Normally, he would never start this run so late. Normally, he was careful. He had a routine, and he trusted that routine because it had never failed him. He usually got to the trailhead around 4 in the afternoon. He would stretch, drink some water, start his watch, and head into the woods while the day was still bright. 2 hours later, sometimes a little more if he took it easy, he would come back to his car with enough daylight left to cool down, drive home, shower, and make dinner. That was how it was supposed to go. But not today. Overtime had trapped him at work. One small problem had turned into another, and then another. By the time he finally got out, he was already annoyed. By the time he reached Algonquin Park, the sun was sinking behind the trees, and the forest was turning from green and gold into a dark wall of black shapes. Mike looked through the windshield at the trail entrance. He should have gone home. The thought came to him clearly, but he pushed it away almost as quickly. He had spent the whole week waiting for this run. Work had been stressful. His sleep had been bad. His head felt full of noise, and running was the only thing that ever seemed to clear it out. 30 kilometers. He had done it dozens of times. The trail cut deep through the forest, crossed a few small creeks. climbed a few rough hills, and eventually reached a marker 15 kilometers in. At that point, he would turn around and take the same route back. It was not easy, but it was familiar. He knew where the roots were bad. He knew where the path dipped. He knew the narrow stretch where the branches came close to the trail. He knew the long, straight part near the end where the parking lot felt close even when it was still far away. Nothing to worry about. That was what he told himself. Mike shut off the car, opened the door, and stepped out into the cool fall air. The temperature had dropped faster than he expected. It was not freezing, but there was a sharpness to the breeze that made him zip his light running jacket all the way up. He stretched beside his car, rolling his shoulders and bending down to loosen his legs. The gravel crunched under his shoes. Somewhere above him, the tops of the trees moved in the wind. Dry leaves scraped along the ground and gathered at the edges of the parking lot. The place was empty. That was not unusual at this hour. Most people came earlier in the day. Hikers, families, dog walkers, other runners. By sunset, the parking lot usually cleared out. Still, the emptiness felt different tonight. It felt less like peace and more like being left behind. Mike glanced at the trail again. The opening between the trees looked darker than it should have. He took a long breath, shook out his arms, and forced himself to stop thinking. He clipped his small water bottle into the holder at his waist, checked his phone battery, then started his running watch. The screen lit up. He tapped start. Then he jogged toward the trees. The first few kilometers felt good. Better than good, actually. The trail was soft beneath his shoes, padded by layers of fallen leaves. Every step made a dry, steady crunch. The air was cold enough to fill his lungs cleanly, but not cold enough to burn. After the stress of the day, the rhythm helped him settle. Step, breath, step, breath. The world narrowed down to the trail ahead and the sound of his own body moving through the woods. For a while, Mike almost forgot how late it was. The sky above the trees still held a little color, a deep blue fading toward gray. The forest smelled of damp earth, old leaves and pine. A few birds called somewhere in the distance. Once, something small moved through the brush and disappeared before he could see it clearly. A squirrel, maybe, a rabbit. Nothing strange. He kept his pace steady. 5 kilometers passed. Then 7. Then 10. His body warmed up, and his thoughts began to loosen. He thought about work, then stopped caring about work. He thought about the messages he had ignored on his phone, then decided they could wait. He thought about how stupid it was to start this late. But by then, he was already far enough in that turning back felt pointless. If he kept going, he could finish. He had a small headlamp in his pocket, but he did not want to use it yet. There was still enough light to see the trail. At least, that was what he told himself. By the time he reached the halfway marker, the sun was gone. The marker stood beside the trail, a weathered wooden post with faded paint and scratches from years of rain, snow, and people touching it as they turned around. Mike slowed when he saw it. He jogged the last few steps, then stopped and bent over with his hands on his knees. His breath came hard in the cool air. He was sweating now, and the cold wind moved under the collar of his jacket. He pulled his water bottle free and took several long drinks. The water was cold enough to make his teeth ache. 15 kilometers done. 15 more to go. He looked back the way he had come. The trail behind him had changed. It was no longer the same path he had run down earlier. In daylight, it was just a trail through the woods. In darkness, It looked like a narrow tunnel. The trees stood close on both sides, their trunks like black posts. The branches above him twisted together and blocked what little light remained in the sky. Mike swallowed. That was when he noticed the silence. At first, he could not understand what felt wrong. He stood still, listening, trying to place it. Then it hit him. No birds, no insects, no rustling animals, nothing, just the wind moving slowly through the trees. A cold feeling settled in his stomach. It had nothing to do with the weather. It came from deep inside him, the old, simple fear that people are born with. The kind of fear that tells you to stop moving, stop breathing, and pay attention. Mike straightened slowly. He looked around. The trail was empty. The forest on both sides was thick with brush, dead leaves, and dark spaces between the trees. He could see only a few feet in any direction before the darkness swallowed everything. He turned in a slow circle, trying to catch movement, a shape, anything. There was nothing. Still, the feeling remained. Someone was watching him. He could not explain it. He had no proof. He had not heard a voice or seen a person, but the feeling was so clear that his skin prickled beneath his jacket. "Hello?" He called. His voice sounded weak in the trees. Too small. Too human. No one answered. The forest gave him nothing back. Mike waited another moment. His breathing slowed. His legs began to stiffen from standing still after the run. Finally, he let out a nervous laugh and shook his head. 32 years old and jumping at shadows. He had run this trail alone plenty of times. He had been out after sunset before, though never this deep and never this late. He was tired. The dark was getting inside his head. That was all. He put the bottle back at his waist and started running again. At first, he kept the pace easy. He did not want to waste all his energy in the first few kilometers of the way back. He still had a long distance to cover. He focused on his breathing. He watched the ground carefully. Roots crossed the path like black ropes. Rocks hid under the leaves. A bad step out here could mean a twisted ankle, and the last thing he wanted was to limp 15 kilometers in the dark. A few hundred meters from the halfway marker, he heard it. Crunch. Mike stopped. The sound stopped too. He stood frozen in the middle of the trail, one foot slightly ahead of the other, his breath held in his chest. Leaves, the sound had come from behind him. He listened. Nothing. The wind moved through the trees. A branch creaked somewhere above. Far away, water trickled over rocks in one of the small creeks. But there were no footsteps now. Mike turned his head slowly and looked over his shoulder. The trail behind him disappeared into darkness. "Hello?" He called again. No answer. He felt foolish right away, but the feeling did not leave. His heart rate climbed higher than it should have. He could feel it beating in his neck. Maybe it was an animal. That made sense. It was a park. There were deer, foxes, raccoons, and plenty of smaller things that moved around at night. A deer could step on leaves. A raccoon could follow the trail for a few seconds. There was no reason to think it was a person. No reason at all. Mike turned forward and started running again. This time, without meaning to, he ran faster. The trail bent left, then right. His shoes slapped against damp soil and dry leaves. His breathing grew louder in his ears. For a minute, there was only him and the trail. Then he heard it again. Crunch. Crunch, not in front of him, behind him. The sound was careful, slow, but steady, not matching his pace exactly, following it. Mike's chest tightened. He looked back quickly. Nothing. Only trees. Only darkness. He faced forward and pushed harder. The trail twisted through the forest. In daylight, those turns had always made the run interesting. Now, they were awful. Every bend blocked his view. Every shadow looked like a person standing still. Branches reached across the path and brushed his shoulders. Twice, thin twigs scratched his cheek. He raised one arm to protect his face, but kept moving. Behind him, something moved in the leaves. Not always, not constantly, but often enough. A crunch, a scrape, a branch snapping softly. Never close, never far away, always there. Mike tried to tell himself he was hearing his own echoes. The forest could do strange things with sound. Maybe the noise came from his own steps bouncing back from the trees. Maybe the wind was pushing leaves around. Maybe fear was turning nothing into something. But then he slowed for a few seconds to test it. The movement behind him slowed too. Mike's throat went dry. He ran. His legs began to burn. He had already run more than 15 kilometers, and now he was forcing his body into a pace he could not hold for long. His lungs worked hard in the cold air. Each breath came sharp and painful. Sweat ran down his back, then turned cold as the wind hit him. He reached into his pocket for his headlamp, but his fingers fumbled. He did not want to stop. The idea of stopping felt impossible now. He managed to pull it out while running, but the strap caught on the inside of his pocket. For one terrible second, he almost dropped it. He cursed under his breath, shoved it back into his pocket, and kept going without it. The forest was darker now. The last blue in the sky had disappeared. The only light came from the pale strip of trail ahead of him and the faint glow of his watch whenever his arm swung just right. He could barely see where he was stepping. He risked another look back while running. It was a mistake. A branch whipped across his face. Pain exploded beside his left eye. The impact made him stumble. For half a second, the world tilted sideways. His foot slid in the leaves, and his shoulder clipped a tree trunk. Somehow, he kept himself upright. God, he shouted. Blood began to trickle down his cheek, warm at first, then sticky in the cold air. He did not stop to check the cut. He did not stop for anything. 10 kilometers remained. He knew the distance because he checked his watch with quick, frightened glances. The glowing numbers seemed impossible. 10 kilometers should not have felt so far. He had run farther than this many times. But now, every kilometer felt like it belonged to another world. The parking lot was out there somewhere, but the darkness made it feel like it had vanished. The thing behind him did not hurry. That was the worst part. It did not crash through the trees. It did not shout. It did not run openly down the trail. It just followed, quiet enough to stay hidden, loud enough to let him know it was there. Mike's thoughts began to break apart. Who would be out here? A hiker? Another runner? Someone messing with him? A hunter? But hunting was not allowed on that section of the trail, and even if it were, no hunter would follow him like this. No normal person would stay hidden in the dark just to scare a stranger, unless they wanted to do more than scare him. That thought made his stomach twist. His foot landed awkwardly on a root. His ankle rolled. Pain shot up his leg so suddenly that he cried out. He nearly fell forward, catching himself with both hands on his thighs. White-hot pain pulsed through his ankle. For a moment, he could not move. He stood there, bent over, breathing hard. The forest behind him was silent. Then came another crunch. Somewhere back on the trail, Mike forced himself upright. The pain in his ankle was sharp and deep, but fear was stronger. He took one limping step, then another. The first few steps were terrible. His ankle felt weak, like it might fold again at any second. But he could still move. That was enough. He started running again, not smoothly now, not like before. His stride became uneven. Each time his bad foot hit the ground, pain stabbed up through his leg. He clenched his teeth and kept going. 8 kilometers. 7, 6, the numbers changed too slowly. His lungs burned. His throat felt raw. His injured ankle screamed with every step. The cut near his eye throbbed, and blood had reached his jaw. He wiped at it with the back of his hand and smeared it across his skin. The trail dropped into a low section where the ground was damp. Mike splashed through shallow mud and nearly lost his balance again. He grabbed at a tree branch to steady himself, then pushed forward. Behind him, something snapped. A branch. Closer this time. He did not look back. He could not. Looking back made it real. The darkness between the trees seemed alive now. Several times, he thought he saw movement out of the corner of his eye. A tall shape between two trunks. A pale blur low to the ground. A figure standing still just beyond the trail.